Most people know her as Johnny Cash's wife, the woman who inspired Ring of Fire. But what they don't know is that she was already a superstar before she ever met the Man in Black. At just 6 years old, she was performing on stage. By 10, she was touring the country. She wrote one of the most famous songs in music history, won 5 Grammy Awards, and built a musical empire that lasted for decades. Still, her story has often been overshadowed by tragedy, heartbreak, and a love so consuming, it eventually took both their lives within 4 months of each other. June Carter was more than a muse or supporting act. She was a comedian, a rebel, and a genius songwriter who refused to live in anyone else's shadow. This isn't just a love story, it's the story of a woman who conquered the music industry, lost everything, and still managed to leave a mark that would change country music forever. What you're about to learn may completely change the way you see one of country music's most iconic couples. Because behind the fame and romance, June Carter carried secrets that even her closest friends never knew, secrets involving forbidden love, family scandals, and a tragic ending no one saw coming. She wasn't just born into music. She was born into royalty. The Carter family was already considered the first family of country music, recording hits before June could even walk. But unlike other children born into musical dynasties, June was something else entirely, a prodigy. While other kids played with toys, June was performing professionally. She quickly mastered the auto harp, banjo, and guitar with an intensity that even her seasoned musical parents found alarming. By age 10, she developed a guitar technique known as the Carter scratch, a style so distinct that musicians still try to imitate it today. But June's story didn't follow the path most would expect. In 1943, at just 14 years old, she faced a major turning point. The original Carter family disbanded. For many, that would have been the end. But for June, it was just the beginning. Her mother, Maybelle, formed a new group, the Carter sisters and Mother Maybelle. And June wasn't just a background player, she became the group's frontwoman and resident comedian. Imagine a 14-year-old girl commanding stages across America, making grown adults laugh until their sides hurt. The Carter sisters were more than a family band. They were pioneers, hitting radio stations across Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. June wasn't only singing. She co-hosted radio shows, handled live commercial ads, and created original characters, the most famous being her comedic alter ego, Aunt Polly. Described by her colleagues as a natural-born clown, June used this character not just for laughs, but as a way to assert her voice in a male-dominated industry. And all this happened while she was still a high school student at John Marshall High. She juggled academics with a professional touring career that would have exhausted most adults. But June thrived in the chaos. She later confessed that she had to work harder than her sisters musically. But she had something they didn't: unmatched ability to connect with audiences through humor and presence. By 1950, June and her sisters achieved something extraordinary. They were invited to join the Grand Ole Opry, the most prestigious stage in country music. June was only 21, already sharing the spotlight with legends like Hank Williams and a young Elvis Presley. Incidentally, was a distant relative of the Carter family. But it was during these early Opry years that June's life began to shift in ways no one could have predicted. Everything that followed defined not just June Carter's life, but the trajectory of American music. She met a rising star named Johnny Cash, and what unfolded between them became one of music's greatest love stories, and also one of its most tragic. Most people assume June's life began the moment she met Johnny, but they couldn't be more wrong. By the time their paths crossed, June had already caught the attention of Hollywood. In 1955, renowned director Elia Kazan saw her perform at the Grand Ole Opry and gave her advice that would change her life: pursue acting. June didn't just consider it, she left behind everything familiar and moved to New York City to study under the legendary Lee Strasberg and Sanford Meisner at the Actors Studio. These weren't just any coaches, they trained some of Hollywood's biggest names. June held her own among future stars, and her television career quickly took off. She landed roles on shows like Gunsmoke and Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and appeared in films like The Apostle. Yet, despite her growing success in acting, June never left music behind. It was during the early 1960s that she began writing songs. And one of them would become iconic. Working with Merle Kilgore, she co-wrote Ring of Fire, a song that wasn't just a hit, but a raw, emotional confession. The lyrics revealed her deep, complicated feelings for a married man she couldn't have, Johnny Cash. The song was so personal, she couldn't even bring herself to record it. Instead, her sister Anita Carter did. But when Johnny heard it, he turned it into something extraordinary. He added mariachi horns. June and her family sang background vocals. And the final result was a #1 hit that sat atop them charts for 7 weeks. That success didn't come without controversy. Johnny's first wife, Vivian Liberto, later claimed that he co-wrote the song with Merle Kilgore and gave June credit only because she needed the money and because he liked her. Whether true or not, Ring of Fire became a defining moment for both June and Johnny, marking the start of a musical partnership that would change their lives. In 1964, they recorded their first duet, Bob Dylan's It Ain't Me, Babe. Their chemistry was instant and electric. Audiences and critics knew they were witnessing something special. By 1967, their collaboration reached new heights with the release of Jackson, a fiery duet that became a signature hit and earned them a Grammy in 1968. That same year, they released a collaborative album, Carrying On with Johnny Cash and June Carter, further cementing their creative bond. And remarkably, all of this happened before they were married. At the time, June was simultaneously maintaining a solo career, acting in television and film, and crafting a musical legacy. As a solo artist in the 1950s, June had already released hits like Jukebox Blues and the comedic No Swallowin', place where her exaggerated breathing and sharp timing showcased her unique voice and humor. She was proving something rare, that a woman in country music could succeed on her own terms, in her own voice, across multiple industries, without conforming to what others expected her to be. Her personal life, however, was far more complicated than the public realized. Her first marriage in 1952 was to country singer Carl Smith. She was 23, and together they had a daughter, Rebecca Carlene Smith, better known as Carlene Carter, who would follow in her mother's musical footsteps. That marriage ended in divorce by 1956. When June was just 27 in 1957, she married again, this time to Edwin Ripnix, a former football player and police officer, far removed from the entertainment world. Perhaps she was seeking stability outside of the industry. They had a daughter, Rosie Nix Adams, in 1958, but this marriage also ended in divorce by 1966. 2 failed marriages, by the age of 37, might have left most people disillusioned. But June's heart had already moved elsewhere. She had fallen in love with Johnny Cash, and their love story quickly became one of the most talked about scandals in the country music world. Johnny was still married to Vivian Liberto, with whom he had 4 daughters. On the surface, he seemed like a devoted family man. But behind the scenes, his relationship with June had become impossible to ignore. Their musical chemistry had long sparked rumors, but now the personal connection was causing real tension. Ring of Fire wasn't just a hit, it was June's bold public confession. She had written a song about falling for a man she couldn't have, handed it to her sister to sing, and watched as the man she loved turned it into a career-defining anthem. The emotional weight of that decision and the consequences that followed marked a turning point in all of their lives. The hospital bed that read, "June, you are my heart." He clutched it after she passed, and those around him knew immediately he wouldn't survive long without her. Just 4 months later, on September 12, 2003, Johnny Cash died from complications related to diabetes. Many close to him believe he died of a broken heart. Their son John Carter Cash later said that his father simply couldn't go on without the love of his life. What June and Johnny built together wasn't just a musical legacy, it was a love story that spanned decades, challenged conventions, survived scandal, and ended only in death. June Carter Cash was more than Johnny Cash's muse or wife. She was a trailblazing artist, a powerful performer, a gifted songwriter, and a woman who carved her own identity in a male-dominated industry. Her influence can be felt not just in the music she created, but in the generations of women she inspired to take control of their art, their voices, and their lives. And yet, June's story remains one of the most misunderstood in music history. Overshadowed for years by the legend of Johnny Cash, she was often reduced to a supporting role in her own life's narrative. But the truth is, without June, there may never have been the Johnny Cash we know today. She was his creative equal, his emotional anchor, and the heart behind some of his greatest work. In her final years, June found peace not just in music or fame, but in faith, family, and the enduring love she shared with Johnny. Her life was messy, beautiful, painful, and brilliant. It was a life of contradictions, public adoration, and private guilt, professional acclaim and personal heartbreak, moral conviction and emotional turmoil. But through it all, she never lost her humor, her passion, or her unmistakable voice. June Carter Cash changed country music not just through the songs she sang, but through the strength she carried, the boundaries she broke, and the legacy she left behind. Her story deserves to be remembered not as a footnote to Johnny's, but as a powerful, complex journey in its own right. Because behind every legend is someone who held the light when things got dark. For Johnny, that person was always June. At the end of June Carter Cash's life, Johnny Cash wrote a note that captured everything he felt for her. "I love June Carter. She is an angel. I'm not." What followed was both tragic and poetic. Johnny Cash, who had battled drug addiction, severe health problems, and the crushing weight of fame for decades, simply couldn't survive without her. Just 4 months after June's death, on September 12, 2003, Johnny passed away. It was as if his heart gave out the moment hers stopped beating. But the heartbreak didn't stop there. In October 2003, only 1 month after Johnny's death, June's daughter Rosie Nix Adams died from accidental carbon monoxide poisoning while traveling with bluegrass musician Jimmy Campbell in a converted school bus. She was 45 years old. 3 deaths in 5 months. A family that had brought music and joy to millions was left devastated by a series of losses that seemed almost too cruel to believe. June, Johnny, and Rosie were laid to rest together at Hendersonville Memory Gardens, near their home in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Their shared burial reflects the unbreakable bond they carried in life and in death. Their journey was one of love, sacrifice, pain, and extraordinary creative achievement. A story that ended too soon, but left behind a legacy that would never fade, even after her passing. June's influence continued. In 2003, a posthumous solo album titled Wildwood Flower was released, produced by her son John Carter Cash. The album offered an intimate glimpse into June's final creative work. It was recorded at the historic Carter family estate in Hiltons, Virginia, from September 18th to 20th, 2002, less than a year before her death. It featured songs like Big Yellow Peaches, Sinking in the Lonesome Sea, Temptation, and the beloved Wildwood Flower. This final collection wasn't just a tribute, it was a closing chapter that allowed fans to hear her voice, her spirit, and her artistry one last time. Today, June Carter Cash is remembered as so much more than Johnny Cash's wife. She was a trailblazer in her own right, a woman who helped shape country music, pioneered musical comedy, and built a career that spanned over 5 decades. She proved that women could be dynamic, funny, strong, complex, and deeply influential, all while maintaining meaningful partnerships and staying true to themselves. Her impact continues through her children and stepchildren, including John Carter Cash and Roseanne Cash, both of whom carry forward the musical traditions she helped define. In 2023, the documentary June was released, finally giving her story the space it deserved. It showed the world not just the love story between her and Johnny, but the full depth of her life, talent, and determination. June Carter Cash's life is a reminder that behind every iconic partnership are 2 extraordinary individuals. Her story is one of perseverance, creative brilliance, and emotional complexity. It teaches us that love can elevate, heal, even survive death when it's real enough, strong enough, and true enough to outlast a lifetime. She overcame everything. She lost everything. And she still managed to change music forever.